snow was coming down hard when Tommy Williams turned off the lights in his auto shop. Real hard. The kind of snow that makes smart people stay inside and stupid people end up in ditches. He'd lived in Pine Ridge, Montana for 8 years now. Long enough to know when Mother Nature was about to throw a serious punch. Tommy wiped his hands on a greasy rag and looked out the window. The weather guy on the radio had been talking all day about the worst blizzard in 20 years. Temperatures were supposed to drop to 20 below, with winds strong enough to knock a man over. The kind of storm that could kill you if you weren't careful. He was one of 3 black families in this small town of maybe 2,000 people. When he first moved here with his wife and daughter, some folks weren't too happy about it. But Tommy had a gift with engines, and when your truck breaks down in the middle of winter, you don't care what color the man is who can fix it. Over the years, he'd earned respect with his hands and his honesty. Tommy grabbed his thick winter coat and headed for the door. All he wanted was to get home to his family before this storm really hit. But as he stepped outside, something caught his eye across the street. A car sat in the empty parking lot of the old diner, steam rising from under its hood like smoke from a chimney. The hazard lights blinked weakly through the falling snow, barely visible in the growing darkness. Tommy squinted through the storm and saw someone sitting in the driver's seat. He could have kept walking. Should have, probably. His wife would be worried, and his 16-year-old daughter had a basketball game tomorrow that would definitely be canceled now. But Tommy's father had taught him something when he was young. You don't walk past someone who needs help no matter who they are or what color they are. It's just not right. The wind hit him like a slap as he crossed the street. Snow stung his face and found its way inside his collar. By the time he reached the car, his boots were already getting heavy with snow. The woman inside looked up as he approached, and Tommy could see fear in her eyes. Real fear. She was maybe in her 40s with dark hair and clothes that probably cost more than Tommy made in a month. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tight and she kept looking around like she expected trouble. Tommy tapped gently on the window. The woman hesitated before rolling it down just a crack. "Engine trouble?" Tommy asked, having to raise his voice over the wind. The woman nodded. "It just started smoking and making terrible noises. I pulled over and now it won't start at all." Tommy could smell the burnt oil and coolant from where he stood. "Sounds like you overheated? This weather's hard on cars, especially if you're not from around here. I'm Tommy Williams. I own the auto shop across the street. The woman paused like she was deciding what name to give him. "I'm Lisa Chen. I was just passing through when this happened." Something about the way she said it made Tommy think there was more to the story. But that wasn't his business right now. What mattered was that this woman was stuck in a storm that could kill her. "Well, Lisa, your car's not going anywhere tonight, and neither are you if you stay out here. This storm's about to get really nasty." Lisa clutched a worn leather briefcase against her chest. Tommy noticed her hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. She kept checking her phone even though he could tell she wasn't getting any signal. "Is there a motel nearby?" she asked. Tommy shook his head. "There's the Pine Ridge Inn about a mile down the road, but I'd bet money it's full up. A lot of folks got caught by this storm." He paused, watching her face. "Look, I know we just met, but I can't leave you out here. My house isn't far. You can call for help from there, wait out the storm." Lisa's eyes went wide. "I couldn't. I don't want to be any trouble. Lady, the trouble's going to be explaining to my wife why I left someone to freeze to death in a parking lot. She'd never forgive me, and she'd be right not to." The wind picked up even more, rocking the car slightly. Lisa looked out at the storm, then back at Tommy. He could see her weighing her options, none of them good. "You don't know me," she said quietly. "I know you're a person who needs help. That's enough for me." For a long moment, the only sound was the wind howling around them. Then Lisa made her decision. "Okay. Thank you. Thank you." Tommy helped her gather her things from the car. Besides the briefcase, she only had a small overnight bag. As they walked to his truck, Tommy noticed she kept looking over her shoulder, like someone might be following her. But the streets were empty except for the snow and wind. The drive to Tommy's house should have taken 5 minutes. Tonight it took 15, with Tommy going slow and careful on roads that were getting more dangerous by the minute. Lisa sat quietly in the passenger seat, still holding that briefcase like it contained her life savings. "You okay?" Tommy asked as they turned onto his street. Lisa nodded, but Tommy could see tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. It's been a long day. A long few months, actually. We all have those," Tommy said. "That's what family's for. And neighbors." and sometimes strangers who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Tommy's house was a simple two-story place with a front porch and a yard where his daughter used to play when she was little. Tonight it looked like a refuge in the storm, with warm yellow light spilling from the windows onto the snow-covered lawn. As they pulled into the driveway, the front door opened. Tommy's wife Janet appeared wearing her thick robe and looking worried. "Tommy, thank goodness. I was starting to worry when you didn't come home." Tommy and Lisa hurried up the front steps, snow swirling around them. Janet took one look at Lisa and immediately ushered them both inside. "Oh, honey, you look frozen solid. Come in, come in." "Tommy, what were you thinking, keeping this poor woman out in this weather?" "Her car broke down at the diner," Tommy explained, stomping snow off his boots. "Roads are getting too bad to take her anywhere else." Janet didn't hesitate. "Of course. You did exactly right. I'm Janet Williams, and you're welcome to stay as long as you need." Lisa stood in the entryway, dripping melted snow onto the mat, looking like she might cry again. "I'm Lisa Chen. I really don't want to be any trouble." "Nonsense," Janet said, already helping Lisa out of her wet coat. "The only trouble would be if my husband had left you out there. Kira, come meet our guest." A teenage girl bounded down the stairs, all long legs and bright smile. "Hi, I'm Kira. Dad, they canceled school tomorrow because of the storm, and probably my game too." "This is Lisa," Tommy said. "She's going to stay with us tonight until the storm passes." Kira grinned. "Cool. It'll be like a sleepover." "Are you hungry, Lisa? Mom made enough chili to feed half the town." For the first time since Tommy had met her, Lisa smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Chili sounds wonderful," she said. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the Williams house, a stranger had found unexpected kindness. What none of them knew was that Lisa Chen carried secrets that would change all their lives forever. The chili was everything Kira had promised, and more. Lisa sat at the Williams family dinner table, feeling warmth spread through her body for the first time in weeks. Not just from the food, but from something she'd almost forgotten existed. Genuine kindness from strangers. Janet ladled another bowl without being asked. "So, Lisa, what brings you through Pine Ridge?" "We don't get many visitors, especially not in weather like this." Lisa hesitated, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She'd practiced this story so many times, but sitting here with this family made lying feel harder than usual. "I'm a consultant. I travel around helping companies with their environmental systems." It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Tommy raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Janet just nodded and passed the cornbread. "That sounds interesting," Kira said. "Like helping companies be more green and stuff?" "Something like that," Lisa said, taking a bite to avoid saying more. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing trying to get in. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The house plunged into darkness. "Well, that was bound to happen," Tommy said calmly. "Kira, can you get the battery radio from the kitchen?" "Janet, where'd we put those emergency candles?" Within minutes, the family had the house lit with candles and a fire crackling in the living room fireplace. It felt cozy and safe, like something from a movie. Lisa found herself relaxing for the first time in months. "This happens a lot in winter storms," Janet explained, settling into her favorite chair. "The power lines are old, and the weight of snow and ice brings them down. We'll probably be without electricity until tomorrow afternoon, maybe longer." Tommy fiddled with the battery radio until he found a station. Static mixed with a weatherman's voice talking about record-breaking snowfall and dangerous wind chills. Lisa listened, but her mind was elsewhere. She should be on the road by now, delivering her evidence to the federal agents waiting for her. Every hour she delayed put her plan at risk. "So what's it like being a consultant?" Kira asked, curling up on the floor near the fire. "Do you get to travel to cool places?" Lisa looked at the teenager's eager face and felt her heart clench. When was the last time someone had asked her about her work with genuine interest instead of suspicion or fear? "It's not as glamorous as it sounds," she said. "Mostly I spend time in places where things have gone wrong. Places where people are sick or hurt because companies didn't do the right thing." "Like pollution and stuff?" Kira asked. "Yeah, like pollution." Tommy looked up from the radio. "Must be hard seeing all that damage." "It is," Lisa said quietly. "Especially when you know it could have been prevented." Janet leaned forward in her chair. "I work at the clinic here in town. I'm a nurse. You know, it's funny you should mention pollution. We've seen some strange patterns over the years." Lisa's blood went cold. "What kind of patterns?" Well, for a town this small, we have an unusual number of cancer cases. And birth defects, miscarriages. Janet's voice grew sad. I've been keeping track, just informal notes, you understand. It started maybe 15 years ago. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Lisa gripped her coffee mug so tight her knuckles went white. 15 years ago, that was exactly when she'd signed off on the waste disposal plans for the pharmaceutical plant just outside of town. Did anything change around that time? Lisa asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Any new businesses come to town? Tommy and Janet exchanged a look. There was that pharmaceutical company, Tommy said. They built a facility on the east side of town. Promised a lot of jobs, but it only lasted about 2 years before they shut down. What happened to it? Lisa's mouth felt dry. They said the project wasn't profitable anymore, Janet said. But there were rumors. People said there were problems with how they were handling their waste. Nothing ever proved, of course. Lisa felt like she might be sick. She knew exactly what had happened to that facility. She'd been the one who'd approved the substandard containment systems when her bosses pressured her to cut costs. She'd been fresh out of college, desperate to keep her first real job, and naive enough to believe her supervisors when they said everything would be fine. You okay, honey? Janet asked. You look pale. I'm just tired, Lisa lied. It's been a long day, Kira yawned. Tell me about it. Hey, Dad, remember when you used to work on those old muscle cars? Lisa, you should see some of the pictures. My dad can fix anything with an engine. Really? Lisa said, grateful for the change of subject. What kind of cars? Tommy's face lit up. For the next hour, he told stories about the classic cars he'd restored. A 1967 Mustang that had been rusted beyond belief. A Camaro that someone had tried to paint bright purple. A Corvette that an old farmer had left in a barn for 30 years. Despite everything weighing on her mind, Lisa found herself genuinely interested. She asked smart questions about engine types and restoration techniques that impressed Tommy. You know cars, he said, looking surprised. My father was a mechanic, Lisa said. I grew up in his shop. I can change oil, replace brake pads, basic stuff. He always said a person should understand the machines they depend on. Smart man, Tommy said. Where was his shop? Another question Lisa couldn't answer honestly. Back east, she said vaguely. The radio crackled in the background, mostly static now as the storm interfered with the signal. But suddenly, a news report came through clearly. Federal investigation into Chemtech Industries has expanded to include facilities in Montana, Wyoming, and North Dakota. The EPA is looking into allegations that the company illegally dumped toxic waste at several rural locations between 2008 and 2012. Anyone with information about Chemtech Operations is urged to contact. Lisa's coffee mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Coffee splashed everywhere and she jumped up, her face white as snow. Oh God, I'm so sorry, she said, dropping to her knees to pick up the pieces with shaking hands. Lisa, don't worry about it, Janet said, getting up to help. Accidents happen, but Lisa was barely listening. Her mind was racing. Chemtech Industries. That was her old company. The one that had fired her when she'd tried to blow the whistle on their illegal dumping. The one whose executives had destroyed her career and reputation when she'd threatened to go public. I should go to bed, Lisa said, still picking up pieces of ceramic. I'm really tired. Of course, Janet said gently. Kira, show Lisa to the guest room. We'll clean this up. As Lisa followed Kira upstairs, she heard Tommy turn up the radio, trying to catch more of the news report. But it had faded back into static. In the small guest room, Kira brought her extra blankets and a glass of water. The bathroom's right down the hall, she said. If you need anything, just holler. Thank you, Lisa said. Your family is very kind. They're pretty great, Kira agreed. Even if Dad does embarrass me sometimes with his old car stories. After Kira left, Lisa sat on the edge of the bed staring at her briefcase. Inside were copies of documents, emails, and test results that proved Chemtech had knowingly poisoned the groundwater in Pine Ridge and at least a dozen other small towns. Evidence that could finally bring down the executives who destroyed her life and the lives of countless others. She'd been on her way to deliver that evidence to federal agents when her car broke down. But now, sitting in the home of people who'd been directly harmed by her mistakes, everything felt different. These weren't just names in a file anymore. They were real people who'd suffered because of choices she'd made 15 years ago. Lisa pulled out her phone and stared at the blank screen. No signal, but that might be for the best. Her former employer had resources and connections she couldn't imagine. If they knew where she was, they might already be looking for her. Outside her window, the storm continued to rage. But inside Lisa's heart, a different kind of storm was brewing. One made of guilt, fear, and the terrible weight of secrets that could destroy the very people who'd shown her kindness when she needed it most. Lisa didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kira's bright smile and heard Janet talking about the cancer cases at the clinic. She kept thinking about Tommy's kindness and how he'd helped her without asking questions. These people had opened their home to a complete stranger, and she was the reason their neighbors were sick. By morning, the worst of the storm had passed, but snow was still falling. Lisa could hear voices downstairs and the smell of bacon cooking. For a moment, she let herself pretend she was just a normal house guest staying with friends, but the briefcase sitting on the chair reminded her of the truth. When she came downstairs, the Williams family was getting ready to check on their elderly neighbors. It was something they did after every big storm, Tommy explained. Make sure everyone had heat, food, and any medicine they needed. You're welcome to come with us, Janet said, pulling on her winter boots, unless you'd rather stay here and rest. Lisa wanted to say no. She needed to find a way to contact the federal agents, needed to get back on the road. But something made her say yes instead. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was guilt, or maybe she just wasn't ready to leave the safety of this family yet. The first house they visited belonged to Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 70s who lived alone with 3 cats. She greeted Tommy and Janet like family, but Lisa noticed how thin she looked and how she kept coughing. How long have you had that cough, Mrs. Henderson? Janet asked, checking the woman's temperature with a thermometer she'd brought. Oh, a few months now. The doctor says it's just getting older, but sometimes I wonder. Mrs. Henderson looked sad. My Harold never had a sick day in his life until he turned 60. Then the cancer came so fast. Lisa felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She stepped outside, pretending to help Tommy clear snow from the elderly woman's walkway. How many people in town have cancer? She asked quietly. Tommy paused in his shoveling. Too many. Way too many for a place this size. My wife's been tracking it for years, but nobody wants to listen. The mayor says it's just bad luck. They visited 4 more houses that morning. At each one, Lisa heard similar stories. A young mother who'd had 3 miscarriages. A man in his 50s with leukemia. A couple whose baby had been born with heart problems. By the time they finished, Lisa was fighting back tears. You okay? Kira asked as they walked back home. You seem upset. I'm fine, Lisa lied. It's just sad seeing so many people sick. Yeah, it really is. Mom always says someone should do something about it. But who's going to listen to a small-town nurse? That afternoon, while Tommy worked on fixing Lisa's car in his heated garage, Janet showed Lisa around the clinic where she worked. It was a small building next to the fire station with just a few examination rooms and basic equipment. This is where I keep my notes, Janet said, pulling out a thick folder from her desk. I know it's not scientific or anything, but I've been writing down every case I see or hear about. Lisa looked through the papers with growing horror. Janet had documented over 40 cases of cancer in the past 15 years. In a town of 2,000 people, that was 10 times the normal rate. There were also records of birth defects, learning disabilities in children, and unusual numbers of miscarriages. Have you ever shown this to anyone? Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I tried, Janet said. I sent copies to the state health department 3 years ago. They said they'd look into it, but I never heard back. The mayor told me I was causing unnecessary panic. Lisa stared at a map Janet had made, marking the location of every sick person's home. There was a clear pattern. The highest concentration of illness was on the east side of town, closest to where the pharmaceutical plant had been. Janet, Lisa said slowly, what do you know about the groundwater here? Well, most folks have wells. The town's water system only covers about half the houses. Why? Have the wells ever been tested? Janet shook her head. Not that I know of. Testing costs money, and most people figure if the water looks clear and doesn't smell bad, it must be okay. Lisa felt sick. She knew those wells were contaminated. She'd seen the reports 15 years ago that showed the waste containers at the plant were leaking. She'd been told to ignore them. That evening, Lisa couldn't eat much dinner. She sat at the table, pushing food around her plate while the family talked about their day. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. I need to tell you something, she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. The room went quiet except for the sound of wind still whistling outside. I haven't been completely honest with you, Lisa continued, her hands shaking. I'm not just any consultant. I used to work for Chemtech Industries. Tommy's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Janet leaned back in her chair. I was the environmental engineer who approved the waste disposal system for the plant here in Pine Ridge, Lisa said, the words coming out in a rush. 15 years ago, when I was young and stupid and scared of losing my job. Kira looked confused. What does that mean? It means, Lisa said, tears starting to flow, that I'm the reason people in your town are sick. I signed off on containment systems that I knew weren't good enough. I let my bosses pressure me into cutting corners to save money. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat and the tick of the clock on the wall. I tried to fix it, she continued. When I realized what was happening, I tried to report it. But Chemtech had lawyers and money and connections. They fired me, destroyed my reputation, made sure no one would hire me. They made me look like a crazy person who was making things up. Tommy set down his fork. His face was hard to read. For 15 years, I've been gathering evidence, Lisa said. Copying documents, finding other engineers who were willing to talk, collecting proof of what really happened. Not just here, but at other sites too. Chemtech poisoned at least 12 towns that I know of. She looked at Janet. That briefcase I've been carrying? It's full of documents that prove everything. Test results showing the contamination, emails from executives who knew people would get sick, reports that were covered up. Why now? Janet asked quietly. Why are you finally coming forward? Because I can't live with it anymore, Lisa said. Because I've spent 15 years watching families like yours suffer for my mistakes. Because maybe if I tell the truth, I can prevent it from happening to other people. Lisa wiped her eyes and looked directly at Tommy. I was on my way to meet with federal investigators when my car broke down. I was supposed to hand over all the evidence yesterday. But now, she gestured around the table, now I know the real cost of what I did. I know the faces of the people I hurt. Tommy stood up slowly and walked to the window. For a long time, he just stared out at the snow. My father-in-law died of liver cancer 3 years ago, he said finally. He was only 62. Never smoked, barely drank, worked hard his whole life. Lisa closed her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Janet had 4 miscarriages before Kira was born, Tommy continued. The doctors never could explain why. Tommy, Janet said softly. He turned around to face Lisa. You know what the worst part is? We trusted them. When that company came to town, they promised jobs and prosperity. They said they were going to help our community grow. I know, Lisa whispered. So what happens now? Kira asked. If you have proof, can you stop them? Lisa nodded. If I can get the evidence to the FBI, yes. But my old company knows I'm coming. They've been trying to stop me for months. I think they might have sabotaged my car. Tommy turned from the window. You think they know you're here? I don't know. Maybe. I hope not. Lisa looked at each of them. I should leave. I've already put you in enough danger just by being here. No, Tommy said firmly. You're not going anywhere in this weather. And besides, he looked at his wife and daughter. We need to talk about this. All of us. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows. But inside the Williams house, the real storm was just beginning. The Williams family sat in their living room long into the night, talking about things that should never have to be discussed around a kitchen table. Cancer, poison, companies that cared more about money than people's lives. Tommy paced back and forth while Janet held Kira close on the couch. I still don't understand, Kira said. If Lisa has proof that this company poisoned our water, why hasn't she already given it to the police? It's not that simple, honey, Janet explained. Big companies have lawyers and money. They can make problems disappear. Make people disappear too sometimes. Lisa sat in the corner chair, still clutching her briefcase. I've tried before. 3 years ago, I gave copies of some documents to a newspaper reporter. 2 weeks later, he was fired for inaccurate reporting. Last year, I contacted a lawyer who specialized in environmental cases. Suddenly, he decided he couldn't take my case. But this time is different? Tommy asked. This time I have everything, Lisa said. Internal emails, test results, recorded phone calls. Enough evidence that even Chemtech's lawyers can't make it go away. But I have to get it to the right people. Tommy stopped pacing and looked at her. And you think your old company knows what you're planning? Lisa nodded. My car breaking down wasn't an accident. Someone loosened the radiator hose. I found it when I checked under the hood this morning. The room went silent. Outside, they could hear the wind still howling, but it seemed quieter now. You think they sabotaged your car? Janet asked. I'm sure of it. They've been watching me for months. Following me, going through my trash, probably tapping my phone. When I decided to finally hand over the evidence, they must have known. Kira looked scared. So they might know you're here? With us? I hope not, Lisa said. But I can't be sure. Tommy walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. Snow was still falling, but lighter now.
How long until you're supposed to meet these federal agents?
I was supposed to be there yesterday. They're probably wondering what happened to me. Can you call them? Lisa shook her head. Not safely. If Chemtech is monitoring communications, any call I make could be traced. What about going to the local police? Janet suggested. The police here can't help, Lisa said. This is federal jurisdiction, and besides, she hesitated. The mayor has connections to Chemtech. Some of the money they paid when they shut down the plant went into town projects that made certain people very wealthy. Tommy turned from the window. You're talking about Mayor Bradley? You know him? Small town, Tommy said. Everyone knows everyone. And yeah, Bradley's always been more interested in business deals than taking care of people. They talked until almost midnight, trying to figure out what to do. Lisa needed to get her evidence to the federal agents, but traveling was dangerous in more ways than one. The storm was dying down, but the roads were still treacherous. And if Chemtech was really looking for her, being on the road made her an easy target. You should stay here until it's safe, Janet said finally. We'll figure out a way to contact your agents without putting anyone at risk. I can't ask you to do that, Lisa said. You've already done too much. If something happens to your family because of me, nothing's going to happen, Tommy said firmly. We're going to help you do the right thing. But the next morning, it became clear that staying might not be an option. Tommy was in his garage, working on Lisa's car when Kira came running in. Dad, there are people asking questions about Lisa in town. Tommy dropped his wrench. What kind of people? Mrs. Peterson called Mom. She said 2 men in suits were at the diner this morning, showing her a picture and asking if she'd seen the woman. They said she was wanted for questioning in some kind of federal investigation. Tommy's blood went cold. Did Mrs. Peterson tell them anything? She said she'd never seen her before. But Dad, what if they ask other people? What if someone saw Lisa with us yesterday? Tommy was already heading for the house. He found Lisa and Janet in the kitchen, Janet's face pale with worry. They found me, Lisa said simply. Somehow they tracked me here. Maybe not, Tommy said. Maybe they're just checking every town along your route. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Pine Ridge was too small, too out of the way. If men in suits were here asking questions, it meant they had reason to think Lisa was nearby. I have to leave, Lisa said, right now before they find this house. Your car's not ready, Tommy said. The radiator needs another hour of work. Then I'll walk. Or hitchhike. I can't stay here and put your family in danger. You're not walking anywhere in this weather, Janet said firmly. And you're certainly not hitchhiking with corporate assassins looking for you. Corporate assassins? Kira asked, her eyes wide. Figure of speech, honey, Janet said quickly, but Lisa could tell she wasn't entirely joking. Tommy was thinking fast. There might be another way. My cousin Ray has a hunting cabin about 20 miles north of here. It's off the grid, no phone, no electricity. If we can get you there, you could hide until this blows over. How would we get there without being seen? Back roads, logging trails, places those suits in their fancy cars can't follow. Lisa looked around the room at this family who'd already risked so much for her. I can't ask you to do this. You're not asking, Tommy said. We're offering. But before anyone could say more, they heard car doors slamming outside. Janet peeked through the curtains and saw 2 black sedans parked in front of their house. They're here, she whispered. Lisa grabbed her briefcase and headed for the back door, but Tommy caught her arm. Wait, he said. Running will only make you look guilty. I am guilty, Lisa said. You're guilty of trying to do the right thing 15 years too late, Tommy said. That's not a crime. There was a knock at the front door. Not a friendly neighbor knock, but the kind of knock that meant business. Tommy looked at his wife and daughter, then at Lisa. Janet, take Lisa upstairs. Kira, you don't know anything about any of this. Understand? Before anyone could move, the knock came again. Harder this time. Mr. Williams? We're federal agents. We'd like to ask you some questions. Tommy walked to the front door but didn't open it. About what? About a woman named Lisa Chen. We have reason to believe she might be in the area. Lisa and Janet were halfway up the stairs when they heard Tommy's response. Never heard that name before. He said through the door. What's she wanted for? If you could just open the door, sir, we'd like to show you her picture. Tommy's hand was on the deadbolt, but he didn't turn it. Something about the voices outside didn't sound right. Federal agents usually identified themselves more specifically. They usually had badges ready and paperwork in hand. You mind showing me some identification through the window first? Tommy asked. There was a pause. Too long of a pause. Sir, we really need you to open this door. That's when Tommy knew for sure these weren't federal agents. Real agents would have shown identification immediately. Real agents wouldn't be demanding entry without a warrant. I think you gentlemen have the wrong house, Tommy said, and the wrong town. You might want to try somewhere else. Another pause. Then one of the men spoke to his partner in a voice that wasn't quite low enough. Check the back. See if there's another way in. Tommy's heart started racing. He looked up the stairs where Janet and Lisa were waiting. Pressed against the wall. Call the real police, he mouthed silently. But before Janet could move, they heard footsteps crunching through the snow. Around the side of the house, these weren't federal agents looking for a witness. These were the people Lisa had been running from all along, and now they had found her. Tommy's mind raced as he heard footsteps moving around his house. These men weren't giving up, and they definitely weren't real federal agents. Real agents would have shown proper identification and wouldn't be trying to sneak around back. Janet, he called quietly up the stairs. Get Lisa to Kira's room. It has the best view of the street. What are you going to do? Janet whispered back. Buy us some time. Tommy walked to his front window and made sure the fake agents could see him. He pulled out his cell phone and started dialing, speaking loud enough for them to hear through the door. Yes, this is Tommy Williams on Maple Street. I need to report 2 suspicious men trying to break into my house. They claim to be federal agents but won't show proper identification. The footsteps around back stopped immediately. Tommy continued his fake phone call. Yes, they're still here. 2 black sedans parked outside. Can you send officers right away? There was urgent whispering outside his front door. Tommy couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. These men were rethinking their plan. Thank you, officer. We'll stay inside until you arrive. Tommy hung up and looked toward the stairs. He actually had called 911, but he'd kept the call short and vague. In a small town like Pine Ridge, it would take the real police at least 15 minutes to respond. That gave them a small window. They're backing off, Kira whispered from upstairs. She was watching from her bedroom window. But they're not leaving. They're just sitting in their cars. Lisa appeared at the top of the stairs, briefcase in hand. I have to go. If I stay, they'll just wait us out, and when the police come, they'll show fake credentials and take me with them. Where can you go? Janet asked. I don't know, but I can't stay here. Tommy thought for a moment. Actually, maybe there is a way. But it's risky. He explained his plan quickly. It wasn't perfect, but it might work. The key was timing and the fact that the fake agents didn't know the area as well as locals did. 20 minutes later, Tommy's neighbor Ray pulled his pickup truck into the Williams driveway. Ray was Tommy's age, a hunter and outdoorsman who knew every back road and trail in the county. He was also someone who didn't ask too many questions when a friend needed help. The men in the black sedans watched as Ray went to Tommy's front door. They saw Tommy come out and start talking to Ray about his truck, which had been making strange noises. It looked like a normal conversation between neighbors about car trouble. What they didn't see was Lisa slipping out the back door and into Ray's truck bed, hidden under a heavy tarp and hunting gear. Janet had given her extra winter clothes and a thermos of hot coffee. Kira had included a hand warmer and a note that said, "Be safe." Ray spent another 10 minutes talking loudly about engine problems while Tommy looked under the hood. Then Ray got back in his truck and drove away, heading toward the main road that led out of town. The black sedans followed him. For 3 miles, Ray led them on a slow chase through Pine Ridge's snowy streets. Then, at the edge of town, he turned onto Old Mill Road, a narrow, winding path that locals used to reach the lake in summer. In winter, it was barely passable, even with 4-wheel drive. The sedans tried to follow, but their low-riding city cars weren't built for deep snow and steep grades. Within half a mile, both vehicles were stuck. Ray continued driving until he reached Miller's Crossing, where the real federal agents were waiting at a small roadside diner. Lisa had managed to contact them using Ray's satellite phone, and they'd agreed to meet her there instead of at the original location. Agent Rodriguez was exactly what Lisa had expected from a real federal investigator: professional, thorough, and genuinely interested in seeing justice done. His partner, Agent Kim, was the environmental crimes specialist who understood the technical aspects of Lisa's evidence. "Ms. Chen, we've been waiting to hear from you for months," Agent Rodriguez said as they sat in a corner booth of the diner. "When you missed yesterday's meeting, we were concerned. Chemtech found out about our plan," Lisa said, sliding her briefcase across the table. "They've been tracking me. They even sent fake agents to the town where I was staying." Agent Kim opened the briefcase and began examining the documents inside. Her eyebrows rose as she read through the papers. "This is extensive," she said. "Internal memos, test results, financial records. How long have you been collecting this?" 15 years, Lisa said. "Ever since they fired me for trying to report the illegal dumping." Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "We're going to need you to testify. You understand that, right? This case will likely go to court and you'll be the key witness." Lisa nodded. "I understand. I'm ready." Over the next 2 hours, Lisa told them everything, not just about the documents, but about Pine Ridge and the other towns where Chemtech had operated. She told them about Janet's health records and the unusual cancer rates. She told them about families torn apart by illness and death. "We'll need to interview local residents," Agent Kim said. "Get medical records, test the water supply, document the full extent of the contamination." "There's a nurse in Pine Ridge who's been tracking health issues for years," Lisa said. "Janet Williams. She has records going back 15 years. Agent Rodriguez made notes. "We'll contact her. And the family that helped you, are they safe?" "I hope so. The fake agents probably gave up once they realized they'd been spotted." What Lisa didn't know was that back in Pine Ridge, word was spreading quickly about what had really happened to their town. Tommy had called an emergency town meeting at the high school gymnasium. Nearly 400 people showed up, almost a quarter of the town's population. Janet stood at the front of the room with her thick folder of health records. Tommy was beside her, along with several other families who'd lost loved ones to cancer. "We've all wondered why so many of our friends and neighbors have gotten sick," Janet said, her voice carrying clearly through the gymnasium. "Tonight we finally have answers." She told them about Lisa Chen, about Chemtech Industries, and about the evidence that proved their water had been poisoned for 15 years. She showed them her health records and the map marking every case of cancer and birth defects. The room erupted in angry voices. People shouted questions, demanded to know why no one had done anything sooner, and called for justice. Mayor Bradley tried to calm the crowd, but his words fell flat. Too many people remembered his enthusiasm for the Chemtech plant and his sudden wealth after it closed. "The federal agents will be here tomorrow," Tommy announced. "They want to interview anyone who's been affected by health problems. They want to test our wells and document everything." Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman they'd visited during the storm, stood up slowly. "My Harold died believing he'd just had bad luck," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He never knew that some company had poisoned him. But maybe his death will mean something if it helps bring these people to justice." The crowd fell silent. Then one by one other people stood up. Cancer survivors, parents who'd lost children, families whose lives had been forever changed by Chemtech's greed. 6 months later, Lisa Chen stood in a federal courthouse in Helena, Montana, raising her right hand to take an oath. Behind her, the courtroom was packed with Pine Ridge residents who'd driven 4 hours to hear her testimony. She told the truth, all of it. About her mistakes 15 years ago, about the cover-up that followed, and about the evidence she'd spent half her lifetime collecting. The trial lasted 3 weeks. When it was over, Chemtech Industries was ordered to pay $847 million in damages. 5 executives were sentenced to prison. The company was placed under federal oversight for all future environmental projects. But for Lisa, the real victory came later, at a small ceremony in Pine Ridge. The town had used part of the settlement money to build a new community health center, and they'd asked Lisa to cut the ribbon. Tommy Williams stood beside her, along with Janet and Kira. Other families were there too, People whose lives had been forever changed by corporate greed, but who'd found the strength to fight back. "Thank you," Janet said quietly as Lisa prepared to cut the ribbon, "for finally telling the truth." "Thank you," Lisa replied, "for showing me what courage looks like." As the ribbon fell away and the crowd cheered, Lisa looked out at the faces of people she'd come to know and love. Pine Ridge would always bear the scars of what had been done to it, but it was healing. And for the first time in 15 years, Lisa Chen could finally sleep peacefully, knowing she'd done the right thing. The stranger who'd been caught in a blizzard had become family. And sometimes, that's how the most important changes begin, with ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things for each other.